Because if you'd asked me, blank, where does the relationship begin, I would have thought, yeah, that's right, Turkish Airlines, first commercial flight in 20 years to Somalia, and that was in when, March 2012, Mohammed?
Yes, it was somewhere in 2012, but before that we had the current president of Turkey, Erdogan, visiting Mogadishu in 2011 at the peak of a famine that has killed more than 250,000 people and displaced millions. When Erdogan visited, it raised the level of awareness and it rekindled that kind of a special relationship between the two countries, and his support really moved the masses and brought in a lot of help from even other countries, especially the Arab countries and the European, and the US also stepped in later on.
So how do Somalis in Somalia then look upon the Turkish president, the Prime Minister, first now President?
They hold him in high regard. They see him as a big brother, somebody who really came to their help when they needed so much. It reached a level when Somalis realized that Turkey is the only brother in the region that was helping them, and when this happened, they had to show their support and solidarity with Erdogan and the government in general.
But let's just go back to the projects. Give us a picture of some of those projects that are going on there.
I would say the Turkish involvement in Somalia, especially the projects it's carrying out, are very visible. Starting with the airport, when you fly into Mogadishu airport today, you will find a different picture than what you were expecting. The second thing is the humanitarian side. They have built the biggest hospital for mothers and children, and it's called Big Fair. This is a hospital in Mogadishu where the management is run by the Turkish themselves. Just to give you how strict they are with their projects and the running of their project, a friend in Mogadishu just once told me that they do everything including the procurement. They even ship in, they even fly in raw material for construction. And also in a recent visit to Mogadishu, when I was doing material gathering for the BBC and reporting, and I was not allowed to go in because I was told I needed to get permission from the Turkish themselves who were on the ground. So their presence is so much felt that one time I wanted to visit the Prime Minister for an interview, and he was meeting the ambassador, and all I could see were the vehicles, security guys from the Turkish government all around and trying to protect their VIP. So their presence is so visible on the ground.
Let me put in a cat among the pigeons here. Is it trade or is it colonization?
That's a very good question. I don't think it has a very certain answer. What they say is they help Somalis because this is what Islam requires to do. But on the other hand, it's also another sign of government's efforts to increase this Sunni Islam influence both in the Middle East and in the Northern Africa.
And how does it look back home in Turkey for Turkish people? Are they aware of this fast-growing relationship with Somalia?
Oh, definitely. When the first Erdogan went to Somalia, I remember there was huge TV shows for donations. There were singers coming up live on TV, and they were trying to convince people to make donations for Somalia. And for a while, it was a big issue. And again, the supporters of the government, for them, it is a sign what a great country Turkey turned into. It's becoming a global leader. It's becoming this, great country. But for the opponents, it is like they always question why this is happening. What is the end game here? What is the real motivation here? And the trade is one reason, as you said, increasing influence. You may call it colonization, or you may call it imperialization, or expansion, whatever you want, or new Ottomanization is another.
And here, of course, Turkey is doing a lot of its increases manufacturing output. That's actually competing with China. For those manufacturers and business people in Turkey, though, is it not a gateway too far from them as far as security and risk goes? What's the impression, what's the perception in Turkey among Turkish business?
For people in Turkey, the perception of Somalia is it's more emphasized on a country in need rather than a country not so safe. Because Turkey is in the Middle East, and especially in the last maybe decade or so, the region we are in is not so safe. And for example, famine is a bigger issue than security in the Turkish people's perception of Somalia.
Mohammed, can Turkish people operate safely in Mogadishu?
A few years ago, I think a year or so ago, we reported when the Turkish nationals were killed in Mogadishu. There were also some warnings from Al-Shabaab when Turkey started getting involved in Somalia. So it's a risk that the Turkish government has taken and has faced. They are not operating in a vacuum.
Isn't there a paradox here, Mohammed? Because I've always thought of Somalis as being fiercely nationalistic, fiercely independent. You know, is that all finished now?
There are still people who view that this could still be a way of colonization or recolonization, and that they want to change the way people want to live. The introduction of language is one of them. Contrary to that, the Turkish government is a Muslim government, Sunni government, the Ottoman Empire, where Somalis had always this relationship, and they also came in at the right time with help and also investment. I think for Somalis, this is a gateway they wanted to get exposed to the rest of the world.
And thank you, BBC Somalis, Muhammad Ali and Irem Koka of BBC Turkish. You're listening to The Fifth Floor. My name is Amano, David Amano. You know, there were 6 James Bonds. One of them, the actor Sir Roger Moore, died this week. Moore did more Bond movies than the others, and moreover, in an era when film and video cassettes were reaching a truly global audience, so did his passing stir recollections of the unshakable British spy across our language services. Let's take out the mic to the floor. First to Sabir Mustafa of BBC Bengali.
The theme tune of James Bond, I mean, it's playing in your mind all the time. Dun, 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 dun.
My name is Barati Ibrahim. I work with the House of Service on the 5th floor, full service. Most of the films, if you listen to the music, you identify with the movie.
Every time that music comes into your head, the face that floats up is the face of Goldfinger. You know, when he was trying to kill James Bond with a laser, and Bond said, "Do you expect me to talk?" And the guy said, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." So that's one of my key moments of James Bond.
James Bond, there's a lot of them, but my favorite, of course, is Roger Moore, who sadly passed away. I grew up in Nigeria, and my dad would buy us, at that time it was VHS, not CD, so we had that Moonraker, we had that Live and Let Die. We would sit down in our living room and watch James Bond, like, repeatedly. And like my brothers, most of the times that they would play Guns and Robbers, it's James Bond, and they would wear my dad's oversized coat and pretend they were 007.
When I was growing up in Bangladesh in the 1960s and early 70s, Bond was for adults only, and we had to read Bond in secret. Bangladesh, like many developing countries, had a kind of educated middle class who were pretty well versed in English literature. And that class of people likes James Bond because it kind of appealed to them, this espionage stories. You know, that book kind of takes you to different parts of the world, you know, going to the Caribbean, going to the mountains of Switzerland. And so much so that one Bangladeshi writer, he created a character called Masood Rana based on James Bond. So this Masood Rana was a retired major from the army, not Navy like James Bond, but he had the same kind of suaveness. He attracted the ladies in the same magnetic way that James Bond did, so he had all that.
I'm Bruno Garces, I'm from Brazil. The first James Bond films that I watched in the cinema were the ones with Roger Moore. There was one which I watched, which was Moonraker, and it's all set in Rio, and it has some very outlandish scenes that I think the plot started to become increasingly insane as the years went by. And there's a famous scene in which he is holding on to the cable car in Rio while fighting the evil villain Jaws, which was like a gigantic guy with metal teeth.
Hang on, James. The thought had occurred to me.
The title of the film in Portuguese always had to have 007 something. Like Moonraker was called 007 contra o Foguete da Morte, or 007 against Goldfinger, 007 contra Goldfinger. Dr. No is probably the best, which was 007 contra Satânico Dr. No, the satanic Dr. No. That's how evil he was. There had to be 007 in the title so that people knew what they were going to see.
From Russia with love, I fly to you.
My name is Alexei Ilyin and I work at BBC Russian Service. Well, I first came across the James Bond character when I was a teenager after the fall of the Iron Curtain. As every teenager, I liked the huge amount of chases, races, tricks and all that stuff. Especially I liked the movies with Roger Moore because his character was a little bit more gentle, more ironic than his predecessor.
From Russia with love.
What I liked most was his unshakableness, his ability to easily get out of every most difficult, most dangerous situation easily with brilliant English sense of humor, because every man dreams of getting out of extremely difficult situations with this easiness as James Bond did it.
It was a kind of an unreachable role model. I didn't think that's a path for me to take, but it was a fun, interesting type that sold a very idealized image of what Britain could be.
During the Soviet period, of course, the James Bond movies were not presented in the Soviet Union, but they were bootlegged copies, and they were even presented in the Kremlin for the officials. But of course, it was not presented to public because it was not the best person to follow, because he was a very glamorous person. That the glamour at that time was not popular in the Soviet Union. And of course, that Soviet villains, I think that they didn't pleasure our censors and our officials during the Cold War time. The movie Octopussy with Roger Moore, his main villain was General Orlov, who wanted to blow the atomic bomb at an American base. The other example is his villain in the movie Living Daylights, where his opponent was General Kostov, whose dream was to be the head of the KGB agency, the Russian spy agency, and to control the weapons market of the world. But nowadays it seems very funny, but at that time it reflected the reality, because during the Cold War the Soviet Union was viewed in Britain and in USA like a big danger. Everyone was frightened of the Russian generals, Russian army, Soviet special forces, so the fear of Russia, the fear of Russian might, and that was reflected in Bond movies.
007 was this suave guy, this debonair and so handsome, and there's something mysterious and naughty about him. He's never coveted. Sunday I was watching Man with the Golden Gun, and I was watching where he had to lock her up in the closet, and she spent like 2 or 3 hours in the closet while he was with another woman, and she still came back. Even if they slapped him and said, "You're mean," he still had a way to woo them back.
Especially back then, it was a very kind of outdated macho culture, and James Bond is a personification of that. There's lots of it that is despicable, that is ridiculous, that is outlandish, and is offensive even. But there are also the components of fantasy, of irony, of parody even. Yeah, it played well, I think, in the local culture, because he was alpha male, somewhat impatient and disrespectful of hierarchy. Or maybe for a macho culture like Brazil, deserves praise for always getting the girl on top of it all.
Well, of course, everyone at some point in his kind of life uses, shaken, not stirred. Or, my name is Mustafa, Severe Mustafa.
I like the shake.